Hey, here to be fucking negative again. Got two concurrent viewers already. Hello to the both of you. May make sure that my fucking, cause I didn't actually check this before the stream. I gotta get my window up and going. That's gonna be where I'm gonna share this content from. Yeah, that'll work. I'm gonna share this on Twitter. I'm gonna share this on Facebook. Waiting for people to get in. There's a lot to discuss today. I have got a window with fucking, like, what is it? At least 18 tabs. That's what my speed count just told me. Fucking. There's just so much to be mad at today. Oh, you know what though? It just occurred to me I still have the same fucking thumbnail from yesterday. So let me change that real quick before I continue here and continue to mislead people with the wrong thumbnail. Um, Welcome to everybody who thinks that I don't change my clothes because of the thumbnail that I had set up. Um, Setting this other thumbnail up right now. Um, so today's stream has a variety of subjects, and all of them I think are important. One piece of good news and one like long tirade of shit that isn't as good. But let me get into the sponsors before I get into any of that. Uh, this is brought to you by Love Java, Performance Butter Coffee with CBD and MCT oils. Uh, if you have a need for analgesics and you want them in a good package that's good for your diet, feel free to hit them up. It's also brought to you by Castle Keep Crafts, fantasy goods and services. If you need stained glass, little plushies, wood carvings, she does it all. So feel free to check her store out. It's Amanda Straley on Facebook. I think that's how you pronounce it. I'm not 100% sure. Um, but all of that, those are the first sponsors. The second tier is Necrotopia RPG. If you want a apocalyptic role playing game in your life, feel free to check that out. He's been a longtime supporter of the show, longtime supporter of a lot of the stuff that I've been doing, and his game is fairly good, I hear. So feel free to check that out. Also, feel free to check out the next tier of sponsors, which is Liberty Under Attack Publishing. If you've got a libertarian book you need published, feel free to check them out. They can not only publish your book, bind it, sell it, that like the whole deal. They can also narrate it, do your graphics, plenty of other things. Anything you need done, and the full service package is 20% off if you say Jeremiah sent you. So feel free to go check them out at libertyunderattack.com/publish. Additionally, Liberty Professionals. Liberty Professionals is private investigation service in Virginia. If you're in that area and you need those services, feel free to hit him up. And also feel free to hit him up anywhere you are if you need consulting. He's got relatively good rates, competitively speaking. And if you want to support a Liberty professional, just as the name says, who's very good at his job, feel free to check that guy out. All of these sponsors are in addition to the patrons that have been making this show possible for a long time. If you want to be a patron, or if you want to send a one-time donation, I would deeply appreciate it. It would let me continue the show that I've been doing for, what is it, 3 or 4 years now? And it will let me pick up steam if I could start relying on an income that would mean that I could focus on content. But some of the news this week is due to a situation that came up. So I want to discuss that and why the content might be sparse the next few days. Um, just, the next few, though, and why I still haven't put out weekly Hellscape, which I feel fucking bad about. Um, it's this is related to that. It's also related to a bunch of other things. Basically, just things that I needed to do that have been coming up. Just things bubble up, and then by the end of the day I've been doing so many other things that I don't have time to take notes or record that, and I deeply apologize to those of you who want more of that. But if you want to free up more of my time on a more regular basis, please feel free to send some donations my way. It would be very much appreciated. Or just give me work, whatever. I'm willing to do things for money. Either way, let me. I'm done sharing this in all the fucking Twitter rooms. Let me check the chat to see if there's anything that needs addressing already, and I'll get into the piece of good news. Because those of you who listen to the weekly Hellscape know that I start with the good news because there isn't very much of it, so I might as well, you know, chuck it off the top. Finian says, missed this, sorry. You didn't miss really anything. I was doing the announcements at the beginning, that's all. So you're pretty much still in the pink on this one. Um, yeah, yeah, that isn't gonna happen. Good news only is never something that my streams do. In fact, my streams focus on the opposite. Um, so if you're trying not to have a negative time, please never come here. My show is terrible. Um, all of that aside, the good news that we have today is something that was actually going to be, and it's still kind of bad news, but it comes to a positive. Um, Basically, there's a fundraiser going because somebody who helped me by giving me a place that I could rent when the people in my hometown basically blackballed me because I was anarchist or not LGBT or a male, a white guy, whatever reason they had to blackball me, they did. And basically, after months of trying to find a place, I still couldn't find a place. And this person said that their basement was free. So I moved up to Spokane to try and not be homeless. And they were a gracious landlord, um, and they're the reason that I'm still doing this right now instead of trying to maneuver my way through social services. So my deep and humble gratitude to this person is extended, and they're going through something right now. So I want to go over this to see if anybody, because please send me money if you want, but this person needs it more right now, and if there's anything you can send their way, please do. But basically, this person has a situation that came up, and I'm gonna read the situation as it's presented on this fundraiser that they have going for it. Dee's family has had multiple recent emergencies and is now in desperate times. Her teenage daughter had an unexpected pregnancy. Her granddaughter is now 7 months old, and the baby's father has decided he doesn't want to be in their life and will provide no support. Since the birth of the baby, Dee has paid nearly $20,000 between hospital bills, doctor appointments, and general baby needs, completely wiping her family's savings and forcing her to add credit card debt just to get by sometimes. On 9/11/19, her husband was admitted to the hospital for emergency treatment. He is still unwell and it is not clear if or when he will be able to come home. Dee is disabled with multiple chronic health conditions and hasn't been able to work for about 4 years. In addition to her existing health problems, she recently found out that her kidneys are starting to fail and she's going to have to undergo additional treatments. Due to all of this, she is forced to sell her house immediately. Being disabled and alone, she desperately needs help with everything from taking care of her animals in the yard and property, preparing the house for sale and viewing, packing and moving boxes and furniture, taking things to the dump, and occasionally needs rides to and from the doctor for medical treatments. She is medically disallowed from lifting over 10 pounds and is constantly in a high degree of pain, so additional physical strain is incredibly painful. Unfortunately, she'll need to hire help for all of this as she is physically unable to complete most of these tasks. But with no money coming in, that will be impossible. She has just enough money and available space on credit cards to live and pay the mortgage for 30 to 60 days, nothing extra, and the house is nowhere near prepared for sale or for people to view, as this is not something they were planning to do right now. If the house is not sold within 60 days, she's risking foreclosure. She will be giving away her 3 much-loved dogs as soon as possible and selling or giving away her precious goats, because she's too weak to maintain proper care of her pets. The situation is dire. If the house is unable to be sold immediately, she, her young daughter, and her baby granddaughter will be destitute and may end up homeless if they cannot find a family member with enough space to take the 3 of them in. Her needs are great, but even $5 would help right now. Thank you for your consideration. Now, I shared this last night, and in my share of this, I asked people to tag people, so that we could get, some help off the ground. I wasn't the only one, and I'm not saying I am, but I'm really happy to see the result. And, the result was, on my end, that many, on her end, many more. And generally, the fundraiser was a stunning success, started yesterday, and it is now over its goal of $5,000 at a total of $5,875. So it's a very good piece of news. And, I hope to see that number higher soon, because she definitely needs it. I'm going to try and help her physically, because I'm in the area, obviously, and do what I can. I can't throw money at it right now because I have like 20. Actually, no, I just spent that. I have like $6 to my name, but basically, this is going to be like a very good way to pay back what I feel I owe her. And I figure I can also spread the word here on stream. If you've got anything you can send her way, please consider doing so. So that this can, it's still gonna suck. I mean, she moved up here recently too. She wanted this to be a new start, and now this is happening. So I hope that people can be there for her in the same way that she's been there for others, including myself. And the good news is that appears to at least be initially taken care of. Now, it's still going to need things in the future, and she has a lot of support that didn't come in on the GoFundMe, like her PayPal, which is SweetD says, that's SEZ at gmail.com, and her cash tag, which is the same spelling on Cash App. But anything else that people wanted to provide would be greatly appreciated. But all of that aside, basically, that's the good news. And the fact that I'm going to physically help her means that my afternoons over the next, as long as it takes, are going to be taken by helping her. So if I stream, it's going to be in the morning Pacific time, maybe early afternoon Eastern, but there's a possibility I won't even do that because there's still a lot of things that I need to do with regards to everything else. And the daily streams might fall by the wayside, just temporarily though. Like, this isn't going to be like, forever. But if you want to help her, please feel free to do that. If you want to help me, there are many ways to do that in the description of this stream. All of that aside, let me check the comments. Good evening, Jeremiah. Good evening. 163 followers and 162 donated. That's the way it should be. Yes, yeah. And, see, that's the thing. A lot of people used it as an opportunity to prove that anarchy is, workable. we're there for each other. We don't need the state to tell us that we need to donate. We don't need them standing over us with guns telling us, hey, if you don't do this, we'll shoot you or whip you or beat you. We just need each other, and we need to put enough good stuff out there that we can have a community to rely on. That's the face of anarchy. Anyway, that's pretty much the good news. So now we're into all of the bullshit, and there's a lot of bullshit. So let me get into that. Let me close these windows because I've got too many tabs open and it puts a load on shit. And get into the other shit that we need to discuss. The first thing is, and I'm bringing this up first because it really pisses me off. Beto, or Beto. I don't fucking know or care how his name is pronounced. He posted this asinine thing, which is basically him publicly masturbating about a thing he said in a debate. So I'm gonna play this video before I poison the well too much, that people can't be objective about it, because I think you'll be just as angry as me in the end without me having to say shit. Pushing it up.
You said Americans who own AR-15s and AK-47s will have to sell them to the government, all of them. Are you proposing taking away their guns, and how would this work?
I am, if it's a weapon that was designed to kill people on a battlefield. The high-impact, high-velocity round, when it hits your body, shreds everything inside of your body, because it was designed to do that, so that you would bleed to death on a battlefield and not be able to get up and kill one of our soldiers. In Odessa, I met the mother of a 15-year-old girl who was shot by an AR-15, and that mother watched her bleed to death over the course of an hour because so many other people were shot by that AR-15 in Odessa and Midland. There weren't enough ambulances to get to them in time. Hell yes, we're going to take your AR-15, your AK-47. We're not going to allow it to be used against our fellow Americans anymore.
So that's some bullshit. I don't, there's no other words necessary, even though I have many more for this situation, but that's bullshit. First, it's not a matter of the gun used as to the shrapnel amount in your body. You can fire a bullet out of a pipe gun that will do the same amount of shrapnel damage, because it's the bullet that counts and not the fucking gun. The gun does not change the amount of shrapnel that fucking comes out, and if it does, it's because you've got bad rifling and you just fucked up your gun. It's asinine from the outset to say that the AK-47 or the AR-15 is responsible for the amount of shrapnel, and not, for instance, it being a ripper round or it being a hollow point or whatever. Second, the reason so much shrapnel is put in your body isn't because it's a fucking AR-15, and it isn't because they're weapons of war. In fact, what it is it's designed to prevent the round from escaping the body and hitting bystanders. The more shrapnel it puts into a body, the more diffuse the impact is. Yes, it causes more damage, but it causes more damage while doing a better job of hitting a target. So if you want your armor-piercing round that's going to make a huge fucking cavitation and then blow through somebody's body still intact enough to hit like a bystander or two, that's a you problem, bitch. Please never, ever open your mouth again. And then to do all of this as a way to justify saying we're going to take your AR-15s. You're not going to take shit. That's number 3. You're going to send people with weapons like AR-15s to take guns. You can't enforce gun control without guns. You can't enforce disarming the military weapons from the streets by, you know, sending people in for peace talks with some weed. You send people in who have the capability to, like, diametrically and by magnitudes oppose the amount of force that you're trying to thwart. And he fucking knows this. So he knows exactly what he's suggesting. He's suggesting war on the American people. And this is from the same kinds of crowds who say we'll nuke you if you don't give us your guns. You know? In not so many words. So, fuck you, Beto, whatever, fucking beta. I don't care. Um, you know, this isn't. None of that is true. None of what he said was true, except the stuff that he was trying to use to appeal to emotion. And none of his solutions help. The black market's still going to be the black market, sort of like the vape thing in Trump. Oh yeah, let me ban a liquid. That's gonna go better now than it did when fucking prohibition was attempted. Um, you know, all these politicians just ban a thing. Let me fucking spread my dick around instead of actually doing shit. Um, so it's not gonna help, and it's not going to do what he wants it to do, and it is going to result in a public war on the American people. Does he care? No. And the reason he doesn't care is because it makes a lot more sense from a political standpoint to try to outlaw weapons than it does to try to address the underlying social and economic conditions that eventually end up turning people into killers. So I was relatively irritated with this. And so I made this post that I'm going to pull up here. I made it was a series of tweets, and then I eventually consolidated the tweets into a Facebook post because I think it'd be better to just show a Facebook post than to scroll through a cavalcade of tweets. Like, most of the people here already know what my Twitter handle is. It's pretty irrelevant. But this is my little rant on the subject. My rant is America has no gun violence problem. It has an aggression problem, and it isn't new. Citizens have always been fed propaganda demonizing the other directly by the government and been sent overseas or, quote, westward to act on it. Is anyone surprised this culture breeds death? Guns are either a means of defense or offense. They're a neutral tool. Aggressive people, however, incubated by a society increasingly detached from humanity, which gives less and less of a shit about those left behind by the day, nothing fucking neutral about that, is there? But instead of giving enough of a shit about the men who go on a shooting spree, to not let them, die and be injured as much, be fired or unemployed as much, have underfunded mental health services, or have disproportionate sentencing compared to fucking anybody, people call them incels and worse. And this is just the adult stage. How do you treat the boys around you? How do schools and medicine treat them? What leads them later to want to kill, and how could it be prevented? All of these are valuable questions ignored by the gun banners. Like they don't really care. So I stand by that statement. And I hope that anybody who does think banning guns is the solution considers watching this. Because I can't say it enough. The Huey Newton quote is perfect. Any unarmed people are slaves or subject to slavery at any given point. Why can we not just understand this and refuse to be slaves? Why is the left okay with being slaves? Questions for another day, I guess. It pains me to see this as the level of discourse. It pains me to see the common person being swayed and bullied by politicians who don't actually have a fucking solution. All they have is lip service and bans. That's not gonna change shit. So, I got pretty irritated with Beto O'Rourke, or whatever you pronounce his name as. Fuck that piece of shit. Using the deaths of innocent people to push a narrative, to push a ban, to push his candidacy, to push his star status that won't actually solve the fucking problem. Arrogant, dipshitted cunt. Can't even cook a burger properly, much less serve a country. Fuck you. Fuck out of here. Anyway, let me get back on track, because, there are things that are in the chat that I need to address. I just figured that I'd get that out of the way. It doesn't take anarchy or any other political crap to be a good person. Well, right, yeah. I mean, but anarchy helps. I would say not helping the state helps your good person status. But, that's me. Lucifer means Mariposa, says Francis. Not exactly sure what you mean by that. Mad Warrior says, we need guns to protect ourselves if someone is about to kill us or someone we love. Not everyone knows martial arts. Beto can take all the guns he's going to take and shove them up his ass. Yeah, and I do know some martial arts, but it's no replacement for a gun when somebody comes at you with one. Ultimately, martial arts is about knowing your ranges and knowing your power. And if somebody's got a long rifle and you've got a stick or your hands, you're not probably going to survive, depending on ranges. And any good martial artist knows their ranges and knows that you don't go for attacks that will miss or overextend, So, I don't know. I think people who want to ban guns are just fucking stupid or power hungry. And they know how to exploit the people who are either stupid or power hungry enough to believe their bullshit. Finian says, rifle rounds keep going. Even if they tumble. Yeah, definitely. And if they tumble, they put out less shrapnel because the round hit sideways, so it didn't have as much crumpling. So, fucking whatever. Lucifer means Mariposa, says, and ricochet off of shit. Yeah, I mean, because that's the thing. The harder the round, the more likely it is to bounce and not just hit a target, mushroom, and stay. Cold Highway says, blue badged welfare thugs will come. Politicians never do it themselves. Yeah, definitely. I just... Yeah, fuck the police. They kill minorities, But after all this protesting and saying fuck the police, we're going to give them exclusive authority to decide how people's lives are run in the terms of armament. And right after I posted that, I posted this tweet about the same subject. Because I'm like, there's so many things wrong with this. That you could just continue writing a compendium forever of all of the things that this fails to comprehend, the gun control narrative. And in this particular case, one of the things that it fails to comprehend is that the people that they claim to be opposed to are the ones who control the guns in this situation. I mean, I posted it fairly succinctly. I said, oh, and while I'm pissing people off, I don't like nationalism, which is among the reasons gun control is shit. Want people to foster jingoism and xenophobia? Make it so the only way to be armed and dangerous is in service of the state. See how many fight in Trump's military. So, this point should not escape any leftist. They're meaning that Trump should be the one in exclusive control of the nation's gun supply, or whichever other right-wing jerk-off decides to assume power given the time. You know? So I'm opposed to that for reasons, reasons that I'm relatively sure most people are also opposed to. So let me check the chats to see if anybody has a thing. Oh shit, you know what? Shouldn't have this open while I'm doing that. Plus people want to see my stupid fucking face, so here we go. I have a series of fucking chat rooms on Twitter. I think like 30 or something at this point. Most of them go defunct, but got a guy in there saying you're a conspiracy. 2017, you're a conspiracy dumbass if you think they want to take your guns. 2019, Beto et al. Hold my hard seltzer. Yeah, pretty much. That's pretty much how the thing goes. So I thought I'd get that out of the way so that people could really have a hard tack stance on where I stand on gun control. Fuck gun control and every single fascist gun controller. Because you're not supporting not fascism if you support gun control under a Trumpist paradigm. Like, let's be very fucking specific. Gun up, as Trey Vietnam, open carry guy who sent me a shirt and has been on my show a few times, says, gun up, He's a black open carry activist. I hope you check out what he does, because he's bringing, like, pro-gun activism to the streets of Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And he has this really good way of putting it, Just talk about the fact that government is going to be the worst steward of gun rights and worst steward of this monopoly on violence. Prove that. That's all you need. Fuck these gun controlling enslavers. So, all of that. Finian says, got body armor and an AK-74 next to me right now. Let them try. I lived long enough. Yeah, definitely. And Mad Warrior says, yeah, dogs kill people. Let's ban dogs now too. And dogs actually kill people, unlike guns. Guns are neutral objects. Dogs can be, like, somewhat agencies. Fucking Lucifer says outlaw weapons for certain groups, at least. Yeah, but not for the state. Yeah. I'm assuming since you have the voluntarist V, that's what you meant. Cold Highway says, of course, as an ANCAP, blue lives never mattered, but I'm just pointing out who will be trying to take them. It won't be Beto. Disarm cops, arm everyone else. Yeah, good advice. Mad Warrior says, anything could be used bioweapons. Is everyone going to continue baby-proofing everything? Probably, as long as it allows the government to continue infantilizing society. They'll probably keep on doing it forever. Anyway, moving on. What I meant is that not everyone can defend themselves from danger, so we need guns. Yeah, definitely. Gun controllers never realize that minority gun owners always end up as the first targets, and cops always get away with it. Beto and other leftists want to do the socialist rights job for them. I'm not sure that there is a socialist right, but we'll get into that in a short bit. Now all the comments show up. YouTube is strange. I don't know what you mean by that, but anyway. I just thought I'd talk about gun control for a bit, because sometimes it's just insanely obvious that these people are power-hungry leeches, and you gotta point at it. Because that's all you gotta do. You gotta point at it, and then people look at it and say, hey, these people are enslaving leeches. Maybe we shouldn't listen to them. All that aside, let's move on from fucking gun control. because I could talk about that particular subject all fucking day. And actually, just one last thing before we move on. This is a tweet that was sent in response to my first tweet about gun control and how it's not the answer. We need a better society, and then these people stop being, insane murderers. And this tweet is incredibly vapid, and I just thought I'd share it and my response to it. He says the internet is a cultural hate machine. Said from the internet, go outside, morons, quit your job, go live in the mall. Fuck you. Fuck you. That's not an answer. That's not an answer to treating, the men that go on to be killers and fucking the boys that grow up to be those men better. Not to call them morons. Not to tell them being unemployed is the solution. Not to tell them, go live in the mall. So I said this is an example of a guy with precisely zero interest in socially workable solutions and no empathy. Calling people morons because they won't adopt the BS slacker lifestyle you falsely say is the only way to be anarchist does nothing to fight any stereotype and lets elites win. Now, what do I mean by that? He and I have a sort of history where he fucking insults me because I had fundraisers when I was in a similar homeless spot to the person that I posted about in the beginning. And this is his entire motif. His entire motif is to live in Slab City and, fucking be a slacker, be a person living in that environment, and he says that it's the only way to be anarchist. He basically spends most of his time fetishizing that lifestyle. So I figured that I would respond this time. Most of the time I just fucking ignore him because that's what you do with people like that. But I fucking it was just so obviously wrong, right? And so don't be this guy. Don't be the guy who calls people who are victims of poor psychological treatment morons. Be a better person than that. I just thought I'd talk about that. So let me get the chat responses and questions, and then I'll move on to the next subject. I thought I was done with gun control, but fucking that I feel like that needed to be covered. Don't be that guy. The chat says, oh, okay. I guess the chat isn't saying anything right now. Maybe. It'd be weird if the chat simply wasn't allowing people to chat. I'd cover that shit all day. Yeah. I mean, there's plenty of fucking gun control parasites to discuss, and there's plenty of people who help their cause, like that guy who says, hey, it doesn't matter what you went through. It doesn't matter what life you led or who wronged you. Just quit your job and live in the mall, moron. Fuck you, piece of shit. Anyway, all that aside, let's move on to a subject that matters more than that guy. And that in this case is the news. And the news is pretty bad. But you wouldn't know that given what everybody wants you to talk about versus what actually is going on. So I wanted to go over that. People are hitting up the Kavanaugh subject again because that wasn't discussed into the ground enough. It wasn't discussed into the ground enough that fucking Kavanaugh may have been sexually may have been guilty of sexual misconduct. We've got to keep on mining that for articles. The news media has to cover it incessantly. And in this particular case, the reason I'm covering Kavanaugh is because while he's back in the news for bullshit reasons, so many other things are happening. So let me first just briefly go over the reason Kavanaugh's back in the quote news. And in this case, the reason is New York Times left out exculpatory evidence from Brett Kavanaugh's story. The New York Times left out exculpatory evidence in relaying a story about Justice Brett Kavanaugh's time as an undergraduate student at Yale University. So, this is what they fucking call news. They say the New York Times left out exculpatory evidence, blah, blah, blah. A classmate, Max Stier, saw Mr. Kavanaugh with his pants down at a different drunken dorm party, where friends pushed his penis into the hand of a female student. Okay, so an eyewitness saw a bad thing happen. The New York Times didn't say anything. And this is news. This is news. So let me be very fucking specific. I think this is ridiculous. And my particular response to this, I said, great, the Kavanaugh parade is back in town. This means we can ignore the crippling debt, global tension at an all-time high, especially with Iran, the loss of many leads with the, quote, suicide of Epstein, the AI superstate, and everything else. Too many, quote, allegations to talk about. So, what do I mean by that? Well, let's look at the debt first, because this is a universally valuable tool over here. This is just a running total of the fucking debt. $22.5 trillion in debt. That's what the news is ignoring. Do you see this shit? Do you see the value of the dollar compared to the debt that the U.S. has, right? Look at this. Look at this debt to wealth ratio of 954 to 1. $954 to every dollar that exists is owed to other people, claims the government, because of the fucking inflated system that they've built for decades. You know, this is what people don't talk about because they're talking about fucking Kavanaugh. They don't talk about $22 trillion in debt. They don't talk about $68,000 in debt per citizen and $183,000 per taxpayer. They don't talk about that. And why? Because he put his dick in a woman's hand, allegedly. Maybe. Well, that's fantastic news. Let's ignore the slow death of the country. Let's ignore the fact that many countries are going to try and come and fucking collect, and there's probably going to be a war over it, because other countries won't like to be pushed around and made America's fucking bitch. You know? Someday the hegemony is going to fail when this house of cards comes tumbling down. And what people care about is dick-handing. Wow. You're so woke, New York Times. You're so woke, Daily Caller. You're so woke, left Twitter. Let's focus on that. And not the fact that Trump is diverting defense spending instead of reducing it so that he can put his fucking wall in that Mexico isn't paying for that's actually a fence. Fuck! And while the Kavanaugh parade's in town, let's ignore this. Attack on a Saudi oil field is a game changer in Gulf confrontation. This is news. This is actual news. This is a thing that happened that has potentially extremely deadly consequences for many, many people. So, the attack on the world's largest oil processing plant early Saturday morning is a dramatic escalation. That's fucking yesterday, the same day Kavanaugh's dick-handing was exposed, maybe. In the confrontation between Iran and Saudi Arabia, even if the Iranians didn't fire the drones or missiles responsible. Several projectiles struck the Abqaiq plant, I'm pretty sure that's how you pronounce it, starting a series of fires that quickly took out nearly half Saudi's oil production, 5% of the global daily output, and sparking fears about the security of the world's oil supplies. It's unclear when Abqaiq, which is operated by Saudi giant Aramco, will be fully operational again. 5% oil of the world's oil supply is down. No big deal. Let's talk about a fucking cock. You know? So here's a satellite image taken Saturday, September 14th, 2019, and it shows thick black smoke rising from the Abqaiq oil processing facility in Saudi Arabia. Houthi rebels in Yemen claimed the attacks, saying that 10 drones had targeted Abqaiq, as well as the Kurais oil field, but attacks of this scale and accuracy would represent a sudden and remarkable increase in Houthi capabilities. This is from CNN. So, they're getting drone technologies, right? The same people, the same Middle Eastern terror threat that Trump lied about disarming, about taking care of, claims to now have drones. Now, I don't believe that for a second. I think the U.S. or one of its allies probably struck, because they know from having had so many allied relations with Saudi Arabia that, an attack like this would never be blamed on us, but we could still dramatically profit from increasing the military presence in the Middle East. We need more defense spending now because it's been diverted to the fucking wall to push toward the Middle East. We need more spending. We need more jobs. We need more fucking stimulus pushing into the economy because of this. Because, the U.S. isn't going to remain silent. This is 5% of global oil. Right here, it's burning. And so this is ignored, right? It's ignored that this happened because Kavanaugh cock. That's the important shit. And while this is going on, let's look at this, which is a video which I hope everybody watches from the Corbett Report. And I'm gonna fucking bring this fucking thing up. I should find a better way to organize this, but this is a video he put out on a fucking report that went out that said all of the structural columns of WTC7 must have failed at once, and that the fire is not an adequate explanation for it. The news buried it. They are not talking about it because they'd rather talk about Kavanaugh cock, or they'd rather talk about Beto saying, "I'm gonna come take your guns." They'd rather have those salacious, sensational stories, But this is what you lose with that. So I want to play this clip real quick.
It is self-evidently the fact and the case that every single time you see a news report on television or on the radio or anywhere else that you encounter that information, it is subjective. It is coming from a worldview. It is politically informed. It does have an entire ideology and an idea behind it that is being pushed by the very existence of that news story. And again, this is a fundamental point. It isn't about people being bought or paid off or corrupted or colluding. It is the nature of the way that we convey information. So that, for example, when you watch a news report on TV, whatever that report might be about, it is coming from an ideological viewpoint insofar as some editor somewhere along the line has decided that this story should be reported on and not another story. So the idea of news itself is an ideological construction that, for example, we sitting in our homes need to know about the intimate details of a political scandal happening in Italy or whatever. If we see that on the news, then that is obviously something that someone thinks we need to know about. That in and of itself comes from a certain political ideology. And when, for example, someone does a random act of kindness for another person, well, that's not news. We don't talk about that on the news. Again, everything comes from an ideological perspective. Everything is ideologically informed in that manner. So even deciding what to cover and what not to cover is in and of itself an example of how journalism is not and can never be objective. And
So I hope everybody watches that video. He does a great job every single fucking time on really getting into the meat of issues, and this is no different. He like perfectly impacts the situation and the fact that news is being controlled. If you haven't heard before today, before I talked to you, before I relayed this information from Corbett about the new 9/11 report about WTC7 failing due to extreme catastrophic failure of everything at once, not characteristic of a fire. If you haven't heard of that before, why? Why haven't you heard of that before? I would bet that you have, heard of the Kavanaugh thing. I would bet that you've heard of Beto trying to take guns. I would bet that you've heard of a wide swath of things, and this is news, but it's not news to them. And so he goes over that. He continues on to discuss the fact that basically when you have this paradigm set up, and the alternative media isn't covering it because they're covering what the mainstream news ignores, for stories like fucking Kavanaugh cock, when they don't cover that, when they don't cover stories that make fucking actual cultural impact, what do they cover? And when the alternative media isn't covering this because they're too busy being the antidote to what the mainstream media is covering, and when they don't cover anything else, what use is the alternative media? When so many other things can go by the wayside because most people don't give a shit. What is news? Well, it's useless propaganda. That's what it is. It's fucking the elites feeding you this by spoon rather than actually giving a shit about what's going on. You're getting this from, very controlled, very biased, very selective sources. It's just something to think about. Please look into the report. Please watch his video. Please subscribe to the Corbett Report. He does good work. And it's angering to constantly see things like the Kavanaugh parade moving through town. Why aren't we talking every goddamn day about the amount of people being killed by troops overseas, by cops domestically, the debt? Things that are escalating constantly and taking more and more lives and resulting in more and more enslavement. Well, because of Kavanaugh cock. Or because, we found out Michael Jackson has more allegations. Or, fucking Jussie Smollett. More shit with that. Yeah, let's cover a fucking hoax and not claim that we're being pwned by the hoaxer. Just extremely frustrating. I can't fucking conscience covering stuff like that most of the time, and I don't know how people can. Anyway, let me check the chat. I'm pretty sure that there's a shit ton of comments for me to cover. Gun control, the cold highway. Gun controllers never realize. Oh, okay, I already went over that, yeah. Preparing for a large war in Life is Feels tonight. Oh, good for, I hope you have a good evening. Being attacked by 100% plus Chinese. Well, at least you can play the part of Hong Kong, fight them Chinese government officials. Lucifer means Mariposa says, just type in gun control on Twitter and you can find a bunch of material. He also says, a chick slapped his peen. Maybe. Lots of... with all that debt, along with those other Dem candidates, Not to mention Trump's spending like a drunken sailor. Yeah, exactly. Trump and Congress, of course. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he's got huge spending, and we could be talking about that every day, but we're talking about fucking Kavanaugh. Eventually, real economics catches up and brings it all down. Yeah, yeah. Eventually, Mad Warrior says, doesn't CNN have fake news on it though? Yes, they do. But this was pretty universally covered, and to be honest, this was one of the better articles I found. Because the rest of them were all like, "Oh well, our gas prices might go up." You know, you might have to spend like 25 cents more at the pump per gallon. Oh, poor you. All the lives that'll be lost in the war on terror. As long as it doesn't hit you at the pump, you're fucking fine with it. Uh, that's what most of the media was surrounding this. So I decided to cover it from the perspective of people who actually gave enough of a shit to cover the story. And in this particular case, not all, maybe not even most, it was CNN. Because gotta bet CNN was part of the reason Kavanaugh cock was trending. Cold Highway says, people such as Israel want a U.S.-Iran war so badly. Yes, they do. Because it'd be yet another theater, and because the central banking system still hasn't hit Iran. Agent Smith says everything is happening according to plan. Yep, pretty much. Finian says they have to spend, or the system will collapse. Yes, yeah, definitely. MMT won't save the economy? Yeah, no, I don't think so. I don't think that we can UBI our way into prosperity. I think that we're going to need a complete restructuring of how things go in order to make it work. Whacked Out says, sorry if this is a personal question, but I've been dying to ask. How do you keep your hair so lustrous? It's actually kind of shitty today, so thank you. Okay, I'll give you a very specific answer to this, because it's not that hard. This is my regimen of products I use. I just use these two fucking things. Maybe I'll put links in the description so that you can fucking buy them on Walmart.com. But I use Tresemme Keratin Smooth bullshit, and that's what I put in my hair. And, mostly it's a matter of brushing regularly so the oils distribute and having a proper diet, because hair is just like anything else, and what you put in is what you'll get out. Also, only washing it once a week. Because, moving the oils around is good, but it won't be dramatically helpful if your hair is constantly washed out, and if you don't let it absorb the oil and remain healthy, and if you keep hitting it with hot water so it falls out in greater chunks. A lot of people lose a lot of hair down the drain because they just put it under water too much. So all that, yeah. Finian says, best way to keep hair looking good, don't clean it, haha. Yes, I mean, if you clean your hair, it'll ruin the surface of your skin, because you'll over scrub it, and it's just like any other skin, especially facial skin. If you over scrub it, it dries out and it can't hold hair follicles as well. You need that oil layer, and you need it coming up. So don't wash it any more than you have to. Mine is kind of greasy. I wash it every 5 to 7 days, depending on what I'm doing. So that should tell you. Do cats wash their hair? We should keep natural oils there. Yep. Definitely. We have to wash cats, Patriot. Yeah, I mean, you have to wash cats eventually, but for the most part, they take care of it themselves. My hair fucked up, dry as hell. Well, you gotta get some moisture in there. You gotta eat more fats. You gotta have enough protein that the fat can soak into a very thick hair from a very thick root. And you've got to, wash it infrequently so that the oils don't sap out of it. No matter the length, that's gonna help. Anyway, Thank you for the hair compliments, chat. Um, all of that aside, I figured I'd bring up the news because people don't fucking talk about the goddamn news. They talk about very strictly controlled subjects. They talk about what they think their base would like, and that's it. You know. So this this channel's the antithesis of that. I'm gonna fucking talk raw and unfiltered as much as possible, directly to you guys as much as possible, and that's gonna be my mo. But not everybody's like that, and it's actually understandable that they aren't. I get hate for it, and I've been called a cult leader, a gang leader, a fucking much more than that, fucking hate group leader because of all the things that I've said in the past, unfiltered. So, I mean, it's understandable that they wouldn't want to do what I do, but it's still pretty much the reason the system is the way it is because of what people choose to discuss and what they omit. You know, you don't talk about problems, they get bigger. Um, I've got responses from the guy who who I talked about earlier in the stream, and he says, "Change the system by tweeting? Go for it, keyboard cowboy. You ain't never seen a rodeo." There are plenty of people who've seen plenty of quote rodeos who are with me, so you need to suck off. You know, your your solutions are more the same deadened emotional deluge of sitting on your ass. I'm not an anarchist, neither are you. You fulfill a BS niche of do-gooders who love to talk and don't know how or what to do. Then we're not do-gooders, you piece of shit? And stop contradicting yourself and maybe get off the meth and whatever else you're on? He says, "E-spange for rent money so you can have an air conditioner, then call yourself an anarchist. Yes, you're a moron." So this guy's a dumbass. Please don't ever be like him. He claims to be the janitor of anarchy because he's cleaning people like me out, I guess. But, if y'all want to help me e-spange, if that's what this is going to be called by dumb shits who can't do anything, um, then feel free to hit up any of the links in the fucking description. Anyway, moving on, because I don't want the stream to be about that dipshit. I think now would be a good time to get into the actual meat of this, which is, and keep in mind, this is the kind of thing that's blocked when people talk about things like Kavanaugh. It's blocked when people make the conversation about whatever the topic du jour is that the mainstream media wants to discuss. I'm going to bring this up, and this is the reason my channel will never be monetized by anything but things like super chats and subscriptions to it, because even when I reach the coveted 4,000 watch hours and 1,000 subscribers, covering things like this is going to damage everything. A Pennsylvania former cop and veteran pleaded guilty to possession of the most horrific child pornography and distributing it for over a fucking decade. And this is from Jack Burns on the freethoughtproject.com. Please subscribe to their emails, subscribe to anything you can over there. Send them your money before you send it to me. They do good work, and they had to lay off a lot of their staff when they were censored. But conservatives are the only ones censored. Yeah, shut the fuck up, whoever says that. Anyway, pedophile cop admits to running horrifying child porn network that included infants. A former Army veteran and police officer was convicted on multiple counts for being a distributor and possessing over 4,000 images of the most disturbing child porn. Matthew Lever, 38, of Suderton, Pennsylvania, was violating the laws he was sworn to uphold while taking a paycheck as a law enforcement officer. Even though Lever had quit the police force in Montgomery County 3 years before being arrested and convicted, prosecutors were quick to point out his addiction to kiddie porn dated back to his time in the Army, and throughout his service as a law enforcement officer. Lavera's child porn stash was located on his phone, his external hard drive, as well as his computer, according to the Philadelphia, not, I guess, Pennsylvania. Sorry. I don't know my states as well as I should. Inquirer. Assistant U.S. Attorney Eileen Castillo-Zalek stated in court findings. So, please read the article. Please go to their site regularly. They're much, much better at regularly talking about the news than I am. And that's the thing. There are many people who are better at doing what I do than me. And these people are some of them. They do very good work and they deserve a lot of attention. But this story is an example of what happens when you let pedophiles have power. Because, you know, I got hate. I got called a hate group. Fucking leader for running my anti-pedo action Twitter and Discord. But this is the sort of person we exposed. This is the sort of person that we targeted. This sort of cop who does this sort of thing. Just thought I'd bring that up, because it gets tiring to constantly have to defend myself from people who say that I don't do good shit. So, fuck that guy who talked shit earlier. Fuck this pedo cop. I hope he spends the rest of his life behind bars. Next to some people who have a different way of speaking than some other people. And sorry about the noise. I have housemates. They're talking, I guess, through a door. Whatever. Anyway, all this aside, let's move on to the next subject. I just figured I'd cover that. The next subject being how people falsely assume that the left is the only enemy. Right libertarians specifically do this frequently. And it recently really pissed me off when I saw this post. So I'm going to bring up what this post is and people's general response to it, including my own. This post says, it's time to end all these illegal wars with other countries and go to war with America's real enemy, Democrats. Now, he might have been joking. I don't fucking know. The fact that he laughed at my reply to it means that he might have been just joking. But there are many people who actually co-signed this. So my response below is that anyone who co-signs this has an underdeveloped frontal lobe, and plenty of other people had really good responses to it, like, for instance, Kevin Scott Tyler here, who says, there is no black versus white, there is no Republican versus Democrat, there is no gay versus straight, there is no atheist versus fanatic. There is no rich versus poor or left versus right. There is only us versus them. The labels with which we identify ourselves and others only keep us divided and fighting each other instead of fighting back. So, you know, it's something to consider, maybe, that when we have these agendas, that they might not be good for the common person. They might feel good at the time, but really consider what kinds of things you're pushing. So I posted that, and it didn't, you know, he posted a laugh react. Maybe he's totally just joking and all that shit, but he's got plenty of people who aren't joking who co-signed it. There's plenty of people who saw this for what it was, which is untrue. But my post about it was over here. Let me fucking find it. That is when I eventually fucking... There we go. So this was my response, using the same background. PSA, if you hate the left more than the concept of the state, you're not libertarian, much less anarchist. The right sucks too. And Phoenix Daniels, who's been friends with me for a while, and is no longer friends because of our exchange, says, false, they're synonymous. Better dead than red. And he posts this picture of a firing squad during communist China, which, yes, that is awful, but it's not the only variety of authoritarian statism. So I said, false, the right has authoritarian atrocities to its record as well. And he says, I also oppose right-wing authoritarianism. And then goes on to fucking discuss Nazis. So I fucking discuss Nazis yet again. I talk about the Rom Purge, all this fucking shit, right? And he calls the Jews the capitalist class, agreeing with Hitler for fucking some reason. And immediately starts calling me a commie retard. So I'm not going to respond well to that, even if it was true. And like all this shit started falling from his fucking shit mouth until he eventually starts saying shit like this: political spectrum fixed, and hijacking the bottom unity hashtag to say that only one point on the political spectrum is total freedom. So he's incredibly stupid. And I kept on hitting him on this subject because what he's basically saying is that the most authoritarian rightists are only 50% as authoritarian as the most authoritarian leftists. That's the way this inverted chart works. It doesn't work any other way, and it doesn't lead to any other conclusions. And the colors didn't change. He knew exactly what the fuck he was saying, and he later goes on to say that he's an agorist, which is not where the bottommost freedom is on this chart. Agorists are to the left of ANCAPs, for those of you who don't fucking read. So I went on a long conversation with him and another person, which eventually ended up in him unfriending me after I quoted him as saying this bullshit. So I just want to go over that. Socialism is relatively new compared to many other political philosophies. It's relatively new compared to many other things, and it's fucking not the only kind of political system. Every type of government is authoritarian potential, you know? Every type of government, and it's not just the right. It's not just the right. Well, it's not just the right. It's not just the left. It's not just socialism. But for some reason, there's a significant chunk of fucking right libertarians who say, oh, socialism is when government does stuff. Oh, it's government? Well, then clearly it's socialism. It's asinine. It's retarded. And it needs to go if y'all are to win. Because nobody who has studied this shit is going to take you seriously when you say, oh, it's socialism when the government does stuff. Or that the left is the expression of absolute slavery, and the right is 50% of that when they're his chart was so asinine as to put far upper right fascists alongside ANCOMs as just a dead heat, invert the center, fuck the political spectrum. It didn't do what I wanted it to, so now I'll completely revise it with no explanation, no reason, and no fucking logic. And so I decided to go into this. And eventually it resulted in him deciding to unfriend after, I think, years of being Facebook friends, because I wasn't taking his shit. And because people were laughing at him. He has an entire meme folder, apparently, of when people laugh react to your posts. Fucking spam them with this shit. That's not insecure at all. But I posted this, and a bunch of people laughed at him. A bunch of people recognized that for the dumb shit it was. And he unfriended me a little bit later after a long discussion where I proved that not all government is socialism, that socialism is a very specific type of government, and that when you say that, you're ignoring actual, authoritarianism that exists, and saying it pretty much doesn't because it exists on the right. When you have access to the free market within right-wing authoritarianism, since fucking when? And exactly what the fuck kind of Nazi bullshit is that? it makes no sense to me that these people think that we should take them seriously. And so I posted this today after finding out he unfriended me. It said, Phoenix unfriended me after I pointed out how stupid this and the accompanying thoughts were. Pro tip to ANCAPs: don't forget the "an" part of that word, and act like once you beat the commies, you win. Not only do you look incredibly stupid calling anyone you disagree with a commie, even when they don't advocate communism in that convo, but you become the unironic version of socialism is when government does stuff meme. You have more enemies than the left if you want to fight the state, and there are many ways the libertarian left wants to help you get there, if you let them. From loosened restrictions on the arts, sexuality, drugs, and more, the left has its share of libertarians too. And if you don't agree, you don't know history and shouldn't talk about it. Sophistry will only get you so far, and redefining all government to be leftist will win you nothing with but stupid cultists and a good feeling. Because when people see past your bullshit, they'll vacate your cause so quick it'll spin your head. Either you're more than Republicans who smoke pot, or you're nothing but a stooge to whatever rightist power has the biggest wallet, and sacrificing your social and physical capital on the altar of expediency and an alliance with only one side will play directly into elite hands every time, because they made those sides, both of them, even the ones you'd rather have a beer with. Anyway, this has been the Daily Text Rant. Carry on. So, for all the people who were asking me what I meant by that, that's what I meant. Socialism is leftist. There are rightist authoritarian governments. There are rightist and leftist non-authoritarian governments, because authoritarianism is a very specific type of government. And not making these distinctions means that people are going to walk away from anarcho-capitalists en masse. Because you're not going to stick with people that ignore history because they want their side to win. And that's exactly what right libertarians do when they pull this shit. So, I figured I'd bring that up, you know? I mean, we're almost fucking 17 minutes into a new hour, so this stream is longer than the ones that I would normally make. But I can't fucking stand this shit, where people try to revise history to make everyone on the opposite side the bad guys and ignore reality, truth, and reason in the process. So I posted about that, you know? Nobody's really reacted to the post, but, you know. When I posted about this stream, the comments right here, Joe Noble says, not all government is socialism, and David Sebast accurately says, indeed, this may be confusing for those in shut-off right libertarian circles, but literally anywhere else, especially those places that don't ignore definitions, there are multiple definitions of that term, and not all of them involve government. And that has been the case for about 200 years. And this is coming from someone who isn't even a socialist. I just like to read so that I have an idea of what I'm talking about. And Joe Noble says, okay, but in order for that to be true, the government has to be funded by something other than taxation. Well, Joe, if you're in the stream right now, which I actually hope you are, because it'd be much easier to just answer you like this. In fact, I'll say that right now. I'll say, answering your question on stream. So, if you come in, which I'll give you a few seconds to do, taxation isn't inherently socialist. Every government needs to be funded by taxation, and, let me be very fucking specific, the US government started out that way. So unless you're calling the US government inherently socialist, which contravenes everything most right libertarians would say, unless you're willing to go against the rich tradition of anarcho-capitalist tradition of saying, you know, fucking the right is an okay form of government, therefore saying that right libertarians and ANCAPs are socialists, and okay with socialism, you can't make this bullshit claim. And you should stop, because it doesn't make us look good. So no, it's not a matter of it has to be funded by something other than taxation to avoid being socialism. Taxation pays for things that aren't socialist, and um, to be very fucking specific, taxation isn't inherently socialist. It has to fund very specific groups of people to be socialist. In this particular case, a giant probable junta of people to overthrow this capitalist economy. Um, you know, that's how it would have to be in order for taxation in the US to be socialist as it stands. There's socialized things, there's a relatively mixed economy in some aspects, but you can't call it socialism because we don't live in socialism. This place is run by debt, mercantilism, and capitalism. It's not run by socialism. And if you think otherwise, try saying you don't have to work for a paycheck in order to live in this fucking society. You can't. So that's what I mean by that, if that answers your question, Joe. And thank you, David, for being rational in the comments on the Facebook thing. I'm going to like your comments right now. So that's what I meant, for those of you who wanted to know. Cold Highway says, I think it was Pete Quinones, a.k.a. Pete Raymond Mance Raider, who did an episode on how conservatives such as Dinesh D'Souza try to paint everything bad as the left and the right as a victim. Yes, yeah. Fuck Dinesh D'Souza, fuck Prager University. We already covered them like a week ago. Fuck these people. If you're an anarchist, don't cuck to the state no matter what goodies it gives you, no matter what concessions it makes. Because, yeah, your rightist government might let you keep your guns while it bombs brown people overseas for oil money. Fantastic. You just diverted the victims. You just moved them elsewhere rather than fucking, ending the state. That's what Republicans are. That's what the right is. It just diverts the victim class. That's it. At least the left makes it local. At least the left is honest. The right says we give you freedom while curtailing the arts and making every potential issue about who gets to use what bathroom. Fucking asinine trash. Anyway, I figured I'd answer all that. And if you want to listen to Pete Raymond from Free Man Beyond the Wall, please feel free to check out Everything I Don't Like is Left Wing. I think it was episode 87, where I went on and discussed the fact that Nazis are a right wing. I went into some detail. I proved that the Rum Purge, or the Night of Long Knives, as it was more colloquially known, was when Hitler chopped off the right wing of the Nazi Party. The left wing of the Nazi Party. And when he went on to rule Germany in a rightist fashion, in a much more rightist fashion than both wings wanted him to. When he seized power, when he seized control, he did so by killing his leftist base. The socialism was the cock to bring in the nationalism. That's all. Lube, whatever. I'm distracted. It's 1 hour and 23 minutes in, and I still have other things to do. But listen to that podcast. Listen to the fucking anything that I've talked about this on, because I've talked about it in multiple places many times, because it's just so asinine to think that the guys who ousted an entire left wing by murdering them are anything other than rightists. Especially people who want that level of vertical hierarchy, who don't support equality, who do support the quote. It's so asinine. So retarded. So that's my answer also to Conan, son of Conan, on Twitter. He says, I'm fascinated to see your take on how there's a government function that is not funded by taxation, which I always equate with socialism. Guess I gotta tune in. That's my answer. Socialism is left-wing government, and right-wing government is possible. Government is always funded by taxation or some other form of theft. That's your concise response while my fucking throat rebels against me. Anyway, this stream of terrible fucking bullshit was brought to you by the fucking the fucking caffeine supply that I have piled on my desk, and the lovely people who support the sponsors and who donate to me on Patreon. I would definitely appreciate anything you want to throw at me. And I'm going to be here again tomorrow, but probably in the morning. Because I'm going to be helping somebody in the afternoons for as long as it takes. Check the chat. Keep your property, but do what we tell you to do with it. Yeah, that's government for you. Anyway, all this aside, thank you for tuning in. I think these streams are shit, but apparently a certain amount of people disagree, and thank you for disagreeing, because maybe I'm wrong. And thank you for hitting that like button, for hitting subscribe, for doing all the things you do to make this channel possible. Because without that, these videos wouldn't be able to do what they do. Anyway, be well, everyone. Smash the state.